His highlight plays will always be remembered, as he seemed to be good for a huge dunk, flashy pass, or killer crossover nearly every game. But lost in those highlight plays is the overall body of work that Baron Davis put out in his 13 seasons. He was one of the most dynamic point guards the league had ever seen when he first arrived, as he had the strength and build of a linebacker, but had elite speed and quickness, and knew how to use all of these advantages to create a ton of mismatches. He definitely was trigger happy and threw up a lot of ill-advised shots, as he finished with a career sub 41 shooting percentage. But with that also came great scoring, as he would average less than double figures only twice in his career, while having a 7-year stretch averaging at least 17 points per game, which was filled with tough shot making. But he wasn't just a scoring guard, as he could distribute the ball and did it with his own style and flair. Yeah, he averaged close to 3 turnovers per game on his career, but he also averaged over 7 assists, including 4 seasons with at least 8 per game. And then there was his defense. He wasn't the type of player to lock you up, but he was a pest with active hands and a nose for the ball, which led to career averages of almost 2 steals per game, including twice leading the league. The biggest downfall of Baron Davis's career were injuries. And just like everything else that was mentioned, there's a but to this aspect of his career as well. As at the end of the day, injuries are out of a player's control. But Davis didn't help himself by not keeping in great shape over his career. Nonetheless, he had a career filled with memorable moments and great success. A player that never shied away from the big moment and led the Warriors to their most exciting season in the 21st century, pre-Dub Nation. He's not a player that's necessarily forgotten, but he's likely remembered more for his highlights than his overall career. So today, we're going to take a deeper dive into the career of B. Diddy, Baron Davis. Let's jog your memory. Baron Davis would attend Crossroads High School, where he would be a 4-year starter, ultimately leading the team to a 31-3 record and a state championship in his senior year, where he would average 26.5 points, 8.1 rebounds, 7.3 assists, 5.8 steals, and 2.1 blocks per game his senior season, which led to him earning a Parade and McDonald's All-American selection, as well as California Mr. Basketball and the Gatorade National Player of the Year. Davis would be a top recruit, but chose UCLA so his family could see him play. Davis would join the Bruins for the '98 season, and along with fellow recruit Earl Watson, formed an all-freshman backcourt. The Bruins were led by seniors Toby Bailey, J.R. Henderson, and Chris Johnson, who had all been members of UCLA's 1995 national championship team. Davis would have a great freshman season in some areas, but also really struggle in others, as he was the only player outside of the senior trio to average double figures and also led the team in assists and steals per game, while shooting nearly 53%. But on the flip side, Davis was raw and wasn't the most disciplined player, as he averaged over 3 turnovers per game and a team-leading 3.5 fouls, which resulted in him fouling out of 9 games this year. The Bruins had an overall record of 24-9, which was mainly due to their top 20 offense in the nation, which made up for their 293rd ranked defense. The Bruins would enter the tournament as a 6th seed and win a hard-fought game versus Miami in the first round, where Davis would score 13 on over 54% shooting and 3 steals, but he would also commit 4 fouls and have a team-leading 5 turnovers. Round 2 brought Michigan, and Davis came out strong, as he had 5 points about 9 minutes into the first half, and had just crossed his defender out of his shoes as he drove to the hoop for a statement jam. But then he came down awkwardly and had to come out of the game with a knee injury. He tried to return, but his knee wouldn't let him, and after the game, it was learned that Davis had suffered a torn ACL, ending his year. The Bruins still managed to beat Michigan, but were blown out by Kentucky in the Sweet 16. And for his freshman year, Davis averaged about 11.5 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2.5 steals per game, as he was named Pac-10 Freshman of the Year. Davis had suffered his injury on March 15, 1998. But he would be cleared to return to basketball drills on November 11, 1999, just 8 days before the start of his sophomore year. And Davis as a sophomore was more of an elder statesman on this year's Bruins team, as the 13-man roster featured just 2 upperclassmen. Davis and Watson would lead the team and the backcourt, and the rest of the starting lineup would be filled with 3 top 75 ranked freshman recruits. Davis sat out the first 4 games of the year before returning in a blowout win versus Delaware State on December 2nd. He took time to get back to his usual self, as he had put on a lot of weight during his rehabilitation and had to play himself into game shape. And all in all, he would play 27 of a possible 31 games while playing nearly 31 minutes per game. This year, he would be the team's top scorer, while once again leading the team in assists and steals. But he again averaged over 3 turnovers and led the team with about 3.5 fouls per game. He also would lead the team in threes, while shooting over 34% from 3. So, the Bruins, with a slightly worse offense and much improved defense, went 22-8 and entered the tournament as a 5 seed, where they were first-round favorites versus Detroit Mercy. Davis would score a team-high 16 points, which included 4 threes, but he would foul out in the closing minutes, and Detroit Mercy would end up upsetting the Bruins, abruptly ending their season. And Davis's comeback sophomore year would see him average about 16 points, 3.5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2.5 steals per game, earning him a first-team All-Pac-10 selection. Davis decided to declare for the NBA draft after the season, and even though he had already suffered a major knee injury in his young career, his upside at just 20 years old, combined with what he had showed in his comeback year at UCLA, still secured his spot as a coveted NBA prospect.
With the 3rd pick in the 1999 NBA draft, the Charlotte Hornets select Baron Davis from UCLA.
The Hornets were coming off an average finish to the lockout season, but had made a splash when they acquired star two-way player Eddie Jones in a mid-season trade during 1999. Davis was lucky to join a veteran team, as Jones was the youngest player in the starting lineup at 28 years old. The Hornets would also tragically lose their 6th man, Bobby Phills, on January 12th, as he passed away in a car accident. Davis had already been receiving significant minutes prior to this, as he proved to be a capable backup to both David Wesley and Eddie Jones, as he was often able to overpower other point guards with his size and strength, but also created mismatches at the shooting guard position with his superior quickness and agility. There was nothing about his rookie year that jumped out at you, but he was in a good situation that allowed him a smooth transition into the league. The Hornets improved quite a bit, as they had finished 49-33 behind a balanced scoring attack. They would draw the Sixers in the first round, but lose in 4 games. And Davis would not have much of an impact on the series, as he received over 4 less minutes in comparison to his regular season. But his rookie season would end with him averaging about 6 points, 2 rebounds, and 4 assists per game. The team was much different going into the 0-1 season, as a sign-in trade saw the Hornets swap Eddie Jones and Anthony Mason for the Heat's Jamal Mashburn and PJ Brown. This trade left a big hole at the shooting guard position, which would have to be filled by a 6-foot David Wesley, who would prove to be more than capable and have the best scoring season of his career. And with Wesley shifting over, this meant Davis was now the starting point guard, and he looked completely healthy as he played and started in all 82 games, logging nearly 39 minutes per game as he upped his averages, leading the team in assists and steals, while being 3rd in scoring and shooting 31% from 3. However, similar to UCLA, he would be tied for 1st in turnovers and one of 3 players to average over 3 fouls per game. Davis did improve enough to be voted to the Rising Stars game at All-Star Weekend, and would also participate in the dunk contest. Davis would be credited with the longest shot in NBA history when he made an 89-foot shot versus the Bucks on February 17th, as well as record a career-high 7 steals in a November 19th win versus Detroit. The Hornets finished 46-36 and would face the Heat in the first round, who they would sweep in 3 games with an average margin of victory of over 22 points. Mashburn was the team's top scorer, but Davis took another step in this series, as he averaged over 20 points on 55% shooting, as well as 3 steals per game. Round 2 brought the Bucks, and their trio of Ray Allen, Glenn Robinson, and Sam Cassell. Davis was effective, but wasn't able to continue his first-round success, as his scoring dropped nearly 4 points, and his shooting dropped over 10%. He struggled mightily in the beginning, which included a 4-point Game 2, but he would heat up in Games 4 through 7, as he scored at least 18 points and went 15 of 28 from 3, capped off with a 29-point, 6-assist Game 7 performance on 62.5% shooting, which unfortunately resulted in a loss, ending the Hornets' season. And Davis's second year saw him average about 14 points, 5 rebounds, 7.5 assists, and 2 steals per game. Davis's playoffs were foreshadowing for the 0-2 season, as he took another big stride in year 3. He would once again play and start all 82 games and up his scoring by over 4 points to finish second on the team behind Mashburn, as the Hornets finished 44-38, but probably could have been a lot better if Mashburn hadn't missed 42 games. Along with Davis's scoring, he would lead the team and be 4th in the NBA in both assists and steals per game, with 8.5 assists and 2.1 steals per game. Davis shot 41.7% from the field, which was the lowest of his career up to that point, along with a career low 58% from the free throw line, but would shoot a career-high 35.6% from 3 on 5.8 attempts per game, and his 478 total attempts would also be 4th in the league. Nonetheless, Davis's improvements were enough to earn him his first All-Star selection of his career as an injury replacement to Vince Carter, which would give him the distinction of being the last original Charlotte Hornets All-Star. The Hornets made the playoffs for the 3rd straight year and would play the Magic in round 1. Mashburn would play 10 minutes in a Game 1 win, but would not play again the rest of the playoffs, as he was diagnosed with positional vertigo. Davis was a workhorse this series, playing over 46.5 minutes per game and nearly averaging a triple-double, with about 25, 9, and 9, along with nearly 3 steals, while shooting about 40% from the field and 38.5% from 3. And even though Tracy McGrady countered Davis with nearly 31 points per game, the more complete Hornets won the series in 4 games, which included a controversial Game 3, as Davis hit a game winner at the end of regulation, which would be waved off, even though he clearly got it off in time. But luckily, the Hornets would win in overtime, as Davis put up 33 points, 14 rebounds, and 10 assists in nearly 52 minutes of play, then finished off the series in Game 4. Round 2 brought the New Jersey Nets and their superstar point guard Jason Kidd, who made life harder on Davis, as the Nets won in 5 games. Davis would still be the team's top scorer at over 20 per game, and average an insane 4.2 steals per game, which included a postseason career-high 7 steals in Game 1. But he would shoot under 36% from the field and miss 20 out of his 40 free throws for the series. And for the regular season, Davis would average about 18 points, 4.5 rebounds, 8.5 assists, and 2 steals per game. The Hornets would relocate to New Orleans for the 03 season, something that Davis was not a fan of and would even ask for a trade during the summer. But some of his concerns were remedied when he signed a 6-year, $84 million extension a few weeks after the trade request. And Mashburn would return healthy, as he played in all 82 games and was named an All-Star. Unfortunately, this would be the first time Davis would miss time with injuries, which would become a common theme for the rest of his career. Davis managed 50 out of 82 games and would still be a top 2 scorer on the team, but saw his numbers drop across the board, except for his free throws, as he shot above 70% for the first time in his career. The Hornets would finish 47-35 and make the playoffs, facing the Sixers in round 1. Davis was bothered by a knee injury that would keep him out of Game 2, which the Hornets would lose, and Mashburn would miss Games 3 and 4, with the Hornets losing Game 4, eventually losing the series in 6 games. But even with his knee bothering him, Davis had a great series, as he averaged over 20 points and 8 assists per game, while shooting close to 45% from the field and over 34% from 3. And for the regular season, Davis would average about 17 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 6.5 assists per game. Davis was serious coming into the 04 season, as a Sports Illustrated article reported him to be in the best shape of his career. The Hornets drafted promising rookie David West, but Mashburn would only manage 19 games in what would be the final season of his career. The Hornets also fired coach Paul Silas and replaced him with Tim Floyd, who was an interesting hire after going 49 and 190 during his time as head coach in Chicago. Floyd installed a more perimeter-oriented Princeton-style offense, and with the lack of Mashburn's scoring and this new offense, a normally slashing Baron Davis would find himself leading the league with 8.7 three-point attempts per game, which equaled to a league-leading 582 attempts, which was nearly 30 more than second place Peja Stojakovic, even though Davis played just 67 games and Stojakovic played 81. And those 8.7 attempts would be the highest per game average until Steph Curry shot 11.2 per game in 2016. Davis's teammates may not have loved some of the shots that he was settling for, but Davis felt it was necessary due to teams taking away the drive. And Davis was definitely settling, as he shot below 40% for the first time in his career and was shooting just about 32% from 3. But this would lead to a team and career high 22.9 points per game, along with a team high 7.5 assists and a league leading and career high 2.4 steals per game. So Davis would earn his second All-Star selection, where he would be joined by teammate Jamal Magloire. The Hornets finished 41-41 and would face an upstart Miami Heat team with rookie Dwayne Wade. Davis would start the series slow, as he shot a combined 7 for 29 in the first 2 games, both Hornets losses. But he would rebound to score at least 21 in the next 3, which included a postseason career high 5 threes in Game 4, and 33 points on 61% shooting in Game 5. However, Davis was hindered by a variety of injuries that had kept him out of 9 of the final 11 games of the regular season, and caught up to him in a Game 6 win, and then limit him to just 5 points in 21 minutes of play in a Game 7 loss, ending the Hornets' season. But Davis's great season saw him average about 23 points, 4.5 rebounds, 7.5 assists, and 2.5 steals, which earned him a third-team All-NBA selection. Additionally, Davis also participated in the All-Star Weekend Skills Challenge, where he would perform almost flawlessly en route to being crowned champion. The Hornets had a new coach going into 2005 in Byron Scott, and Davis was the lone bright spot on an aging team whose best days were well behind them. But the Hornets wouldn't get much out of Davis, as he was often injured this year, specifically nursing an Achilles bruise, which led to conflict between him and Scott, as Davis chose to rehab his injury back home in LA, rather than in New Orleans with the team. 54 games into the year, the Hornets were one of the worst teams in the league at 11-43, and even though Davis was their leading scorer and assist man, he was shooting below 37% and had only appeared in 18 games. So on February 24th, Davis was traded back to his home state, as he was acquired in a trade with Golden State, and all the Warriors had to give up was Speedy Claxton and Dale Davis, with Davis never playing a game for New Orleans. Davis joined a much younger and more athletic Warriors team who would complement his playstyle much better than in New Orleans. But the Warriors were 16-39 when Davis arrived, and Davis would play well in 28 games with the team as they improved, but still finished 34-48 and missed the playoffs. Davis would establish himself as a top player on the team and had a great backcourt mate in leading scorer Jason Richardson. Davis would show that he was still a great player, as he would drop a career-high 40 points to go along with 13 assists in an April 5th win versus the Rockets, and overall showed his impact with the team, as with Davis at the helm, they went 14-5 with an 8-game win streak in the final 19 games of the season, with Davis scoring in double figures in all but one game and recording a double-double in 8 of those games. And Davis's overall regular season would see him play 46 games and average about 19 points, 4 rebounds, and 8 assists per game. Golden State had drafted an exciting high school combo guard in Monte Ellis and had 2 solid starters in Troy Murphy and Mike Dunleavy. But fans were most excited for a full season of Davis and Richardson, but they wouldn't really get that, as Davis missed 28 games due to various injuries to his hamstring and ankle, with the Warriors going 11-17 in those games, and his ankle injury ending his season in mid-March. And during this time, the Warriors would have a 9-game losing streak that would end their slim playoff hopes. Davis would again finish second on the team in scoring behind Richardson and lead the team in assists per game, with a career-high 8.9, but would also average the lowest steals per game of his career up to that point, outside of his rookie season. And just like the season before, the Warriors finished 34-48, in a year that saw Davis average about 18 points, 4.5 rebounds, and 9 assists per game. Next was a brief, yet very impressive 2-year run for Davis. Going into 2007, the Warriors moved on from coach Mike Montgomery and hired Don Nelson, who was famous for his run-and-gun offense, which meant running teams out of the gym and leaving defense as an afterthought. But this would fit Davis's up-tempo style of play perfectly. Richardson could only play in 51 games this season, but luckily, the emergence of most improved player Monte Ellis helped make up for this. The Warriors were 19-21 on January 17th and had 2 players who weren't great fits in the fast-paced offense, in Dunleavy and Murphy. So these two, along with Ike Diogu, were traded to the Pacers for Steven Jackson and Al Harrington. And they would be the perfect additions, as the Warriors went 23-19 the rest of the way and were able to squeak into the playoffs as an 8 seed. Davis played 63 games during the regular season and was bothered by knee soreness all year, even having surgery to clean out his knee in mid-February. But in his 63 games, he played some of the best basketball of his career, as he would lead the team with over 20 points per game, dish out about 8 assists, and shoot a career-high 43.9% from the field, while also leading the league in steals for the second time in his career. The Warriors were matched up with the 67-15 top-seeded Dallas Mavericks in the first round, and weren't expected to win. But the We Believe Warriors had other ideas, as they were the only team to sweep the Mavs in the regular season. The Warriors shocked Dallas in Game 1 with a 12-point win in Dallas, where Davis would score a game-high 33 points on 55% from the field and 57% from 3, to go along with 14 rebounds, 8 assists, and 3 steals. Game 2 went how most were expecting the series to go, as Dallas won by 13, and Davis had just 13 points and 2 assists, as well as 6 turnovers, while only playing about 32 minutes because of foul trouble. But Davis would respond in Game 3 as he put up 24 points on 50% shooting without committing a turnover, and was helped out by Richardson's game-high 33, leading to a Warriors win. Game 4 was close, but Davis played near perfect, with a game-high 33 points on over 70% from the field and 75% from 3, to give the Warriors a 4-point win. And now the Warriors were one win away from being just the third 8 seed to beat a 1 seed. The Mavs narrowly defeated the Warriors in Game 5 to stay alive, behind Dirk's 30 and 12. But Davis would still score a game-high 27 on over 62% from the field and 60% from 3, to go along with 9 assists. Then, the Warriors would make history with a Game 6 blowout win, led by Steven Jackson's 33 points and Davis chipping in 20 of his own, along with 10 rebounds and 6 assists, as the Warriors advanced to the second round to face the Utah Jazz. Unfortunately, this series would end with the gentleman's sweep of Golden State, but it would include a postseason career high of 36 points on over 59% shooting from Davis in a Game 2 loss, and a 32-point performance in the Warriors' lone win in Game 3, which included Davis's most famous highlight when he posterized Andrei Kirilenko late in the game. So even though the Warriors season was over, they gave fans a team to be proud of, with Davis at the head. And for the regular season, Davis would average about 20 points, 4.5 rebounds, 8 assists, and 2 steals per game. Jason Richardson had been traded to the Bobcats in the offseason, leaving Monte Ellis as the team's new starting shooting guard. And he would fill that role well, as he, Davis, and Steven Jackson formed a potent scoring trio, with Davis leading the team. This would arguably be the best season of Davis's career, as he put up some of his best stats, but would also be healthy, starting all 82 games for the final time in his career, and on top of scoring, once again led the team in assists and steals. The Warriors were having a similar season from the year prior, and were sitting at 48-32, with playoff hopes still alive in a very competitive Western Conference. They were playing the Phoenix Suns, and Davis had a brutal first half, going 2 of 13 for 7 points. And to the dismay of fans, Nelson would have him on the bench to start the second half, but would keep him there for the rest of the game, as the Warriors lost by 6, then lost the next night to Seattle, and missed the playoffs with a 48-34 record. Davis's great year would end with him averaging about 22 points, 4.5 rebounds, 7.5 assists, and 2.5 steals per game. So there were reports that there was tension between Nelson and Davis, yet Davis would say he wanted to stay with the Warriors. However, the two sides couldn't come to an agreement on the length of an extension. So Davis would sign a 5-year, $65 million contract with his hometown Clippers. Davis was happy to be there, but was likely expecting a different team, as the Clippers' leading scorer in 2008, Corey Maggette, had gone to where Davis just left and signed with the Warriors. And then Davis's close friend Elton Brand had signed with Philadelphia, which was probably a bit of a surprise, as Davis was reportedly under the impression he would be playing with Brand when he decided to sign with the Clippers. So going into the 2009 season, a soon-to-be 30-year-old Baron Davis was in more of a rebuilding situation. The team had a couple bright spots in second-year forward Al Thornton and rookie guard Eric Gordon, but just weren't a good team overall. And even with a mid-season trade for star forward Zach Randolph, the Clippers finished near the bottom of the league with a 19-63 record. Davis played in 65 games, but saw steep drops in his production, as he averaged below 15 points and shot an abysmal 37% from the field. Davis would be able to have a couple of his best passing games of his career though, as he would have a career-high 20-assist game in February 11th versus New York, then do it again in March 18th versus Washington. And Davis's first season in LA saw him average about 15 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 7.5 assists per game. Davis was able to stay pretty healthy in 2010, as he played in 75 games, and his scoring, assists, and field goal percentage showed slight improvements. However, he would shoot below 28% from 3. The Clippers were no better than the year prior, as they had traded Zach Randolph in the offseason, and first overall pick Blake Griffin missed the entire year with a broken kneecap. Gordon had a solid second season, and Clippers veteran Chris Kaman led the team in scoring, en route to his only career All-Star selection. And Davis would finish third on the team in scoring, with the highlight of the season being him scoring 23 points in the third quarter of a January 29th loss to Minnesota. The Clippers were able to make a 10-win improvement from last year, but their 29-53 record was not enough for a playoff berth. And Davis's season saw him average about 15.5 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 8 assists per game. Davis would begin the 2011 season with the Clippers, who now had a healthy Blake Griffin, and even though Davis was putting up his lowest scoring average since his rookie year, he formed some rapport with the high-flying Griffin and third-year center DeAndre Jordan, creating a bit of a precursor to Lob City. But on February 24th, after 43 games with LA, Davis was traded to the Cavs, as LA was opting to go in a younger direction. But there were also reports of disgraced owner Donald Sterling mercilessly heckling Baron Davis throughout his time in LA. And Davis would say in an interview years later that Sterling's presence in the arena during games would instantly affect him and trigger a lot of anxiety, which one could assume affected his play. Davis would enter another losing situation in Cleveland, as this was the first year of the post-LeBron James era after he had left for Miami in the offseason. The Cavs' best player was a 34-year-old Antoine Jamison, who was putting up about 18 points per game. Davis, who would opt to wear number 85 to honor his grandparents and the street he grew up on in LA, would play 15 games for the Cavs, starting 9 of them, and would score efficiently, as he averaged over a point more than he was averaging in LA in the first half of the season, and shot over 41% from 3. But the Cavs would finish 19-63 and miss the playoffs. And for the whole season, Davis played 58 games, averaging about 13 points, 2.5 rebounds, and 6.5 assists per game. The 2011 offseason saw the Cavs draft Kyrie Irving, who was obviously going to be their starting point guard, making Davis expendable. And on December 14th, he was waived using the amnesty clause, as he was still owed about $30 million from his Clippers contract. A few days later, he would sign with the Knicks, even though he had a herniated disc in his back, and would not make his debut for the Knicks until February 20th, in the 66-game lockout-shortened season. Davis was hoping to be a starter, but as he chose to postpone his return to play, the Knicks called up Jeremy Lin, which would lead to the phenomenon that was Linsanity, and relegate Davis to a backup role. But after a season-ending injury to Lin, Davis became the starter for the rest of the year, and saw his first return to the playoffs since his 07 run. But this return did not go as planned, as after a solid start on their first-round matchup with the Heat, averaging 11 points on about 62% shooting in the first 2 games, he would cool off in Game 3, then would suffer a brutal knee injury in Game 4, partially tearing his patellar tendon and completely tearing his ACL and MCL, ending his season. And for his short regular season, he averaged about 6 points, 2 rebounds, and 4.5 assists per game. But this knee injury would mark the end of a great but injury-riddled career for Baron Davis. He would briefly make a comeback with the D-League's Delaware 87ers in 2016, playing 6 games, but that would be as close as he would get to an NBA return, which is too bad, as leaving the floor on a stretcher was definitely not how Davis planned on ending his NBA career. So Baron Davis would leave the game with some question marks about how good he could have been if he could have stayed healthy. Yeah, he should have kept himself in better shape, but it's a vicious cycle where the constant injuries can make it difficult for a player to keep themselves in the shape they want to. He had all the tools to be an all-time great and could play the point guard position however you wanted. But he also got ahead of himself and was often trying to do too much on the court, leading to him being a liability at times. But the reward almost always outweighed the risk, as he put up top-tier numbers during his prime. But even with the injuries keeping him out of games, he also played so many games at less than 100% and continued to excel and even dominate at times. He made a lot of money in his career, but never sat back on that, as he was a baller and always wanted to play. He was the last star of the original Charlotte Hornets and the first star of the New Orleans Hornets. Then he found a brief home in Golden State where he could truly be himself as a player. His homecoming in LA didn't go expected, but it wasn't terrible either, and he was a valuable veteran presence for a very young team. His career ended abruptly, but his stature and playstyle was a precursor for a lot of big athletic guards who came after him. Yet Baron Davis should always be remembered as one of the first of his kind. But that's it for today's episode. Hope you enjoyed it, and remember to subscribe for plenty more like this one. If you liked it, check out these videos on a couple of his Warriors teammates. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.